Pippa Middleton married into extreme wealth, total privacy, and a life deliberately designed to disappear from public view. From the outside, it looks controlled, serene, even fairy tale perfect. But when you look closely at how she and her husband actually live where they live, and the choices that reshaped her world, a different question emerges. Can a life built on compromise rather than expansion truly last forever? This is why so many people quietly believe Pippa Middleton's marriage may not endure. Pippa did not marry into fame. She married into the background. On paper, the transition looked natural, the younger sister of a future queen settling into wealth, discretion, and stability. Yet the world she entered was not glamorous in the way many assume. Oh, it was structured, insulated, and intentionally distant from public attention. That decision alone explains much of the ongoing speculation. James Matthews comes from old European money that values invisibility over prestige. His hedge fund background and family culture prioritize control, discretion, and minimal exposure. This philosophy extends far beyond business, shapes where they live, how they move, and how visible they allow themselves to be. Their primary home in Bucklebury, Berkshire reflects this mindset perfectly, a gated country estate surrounded by land rather than people, designed to retreat from attention rather than invite it. This is not London society living. It is rural seclusion, long drives, controlled access, and few spontaneous encounters. Their second world, thousands of miles away at Eden Rock and St. Bart's, follows the same logic. Despite its luxury, it functions as a private enclave rather than a celebrity playground. Both locations reveal the same truth. This is a life organized around withdrawal, not engagement. Before marriage, Pippa lived very differently. She moved through social circles, attended public events, and existed in a space of cultural visibility. She was not royal, but she was known. After marriage, that presence narrowed dramatically. The Matthews lifestyle is not built for public figures. Visibility is treated as a liability, not an asset. Pippa did not gain a larger platform through marriage. She lost one. This was not accidental. It was structural. Even the smallest details reinforce this pattern. Their cars are practical luxury vehicles chosen to blend in rather than stand out. Their daily rhythm is quiet and repetitive. Discreet school runs, small social circles, appearances limited to family obligations. There are no interviews, no branding, no attempts to leverage royal proximity. Silence is not just preference, it is policy. For some, this looks like maturity. For others, it looks like erasure. The Matthews family culture values control over expression and stability over narrative. Pippa did not reshape that world around herself. She reshaped herself to fit it. Her public silence is often praised as dignity, but it is also adaptation. Even her personal style shifted toward neutrality, clothes meant to disappear rather than speak. The goal is not influence, it is containment. James Matthews lives by structure. His professional life trained him to manage risk, limit exposure, and avoid impulsivity. That mindset does not stop at work. It becomes domestic culture. Their household runs on planning, predictability, and carefully managed routines. Leisure is curated. Travel is purposeful. Familiar ski resorts. Controlled time at Eden Rock. No experimentation, no reinvention. For James, this is comfort. Pippa, it was a transformation. Children intensified this dynamic. 3 children in quick succession anchored Pippa even further into domestic rhythm. In a household already structured around control and routine, motherhood deepened the inward pull. There is little room for parallel lives. Public appearances reinforce this impression. They arrive together, leave together, interact politely and efficiently. There's no visible conflict, but there is also no visible spontaneity. Over time, habit becomes identity. The contrast fueling speculation is not chaos versus peace, but expansion versus contraction. Pippa's life became smaller after marriage, fewer roles, fewer outlets, fewer independent decisions visible to the world. James's life, by contrast, remained largely unchanged. This asymmetry is subtle, but it is persistent. People question. Marriage is not when one partner sacrifices temporarily, but when sacrifice becomes permanent. There are no scandals here, no betrayals, no public fractures. That is precisely why doubt lingers. Quiet marriages invite more speculation than loud ones. Withdrawal is easier to misread than conflict. Observers do not see drama, they see absence. And absence over time feels intentional. Behind the scenes, their life is not effortless. Buckleberry Farm is not just a home but a managed enterprise, complete with glamping pods, a cafe, seasonal events, and plans for a nursery reflecting Pippa's interest in early childhood education. These projects require alignment, planning, and constant cooperation. The Georgian mansion's upgrades, the estate's logistics, even leisure spaces are managed with precision. The same is true of Eden Rock, which functions more as a controlled retreat than indulgent escape. Outsiders see calm, insiders understand coordination. This reveals the deeper pressure at the heart of the marriage. The Matthews household absorbs tension rather than releasing it. It resists disruption. Buckleberry's location close enough to London for access, far enough for invisibility symbolizes this perfectly. For James, consistency is grounding. For Pippa, it represents distance from the social ecosystem she once navigated with ease. Another layer of pressure comes from comparison. Her sister Catherine lives a similarly restricted life, but with institutional purpose, influence, and progression. Catherine's discipline is rewarded with visibility and power. Pippa's discipline produces privacy without expansion. The contrast is quiet but psychologically significant. One sister gains relevance through restraint. The other fades into anonymity. Wealth, too, plays an unusual role. It is omnipresent but never celebrated. There is no excess to distract. No indulgence to release tension. Everything remains within bounds. Parenting inside such a controlled environment leaves little room for personal exploration. Pippa does not champion public causes, develop independent projects, or maintain a narrative beyond family. When growth is invisible, people assume stagnation. The permanence of their choices intensifies speculation. These are not temporary homes or flexible arrangements. Roots are deeply planted. Exiting such a life would require enormous emotional and structural disruption. When exits look costly, observers imagine slow dissatisfaction rather than dramatic endings. This is why the speculation persists despite the absence of evidence. The marriage appears engineered for permanence. That can be strength or it can be suffocation. James Matthews appears unchanged by marriage. Pippa Middleton's world transformed completely. That imbalance, not scandal, is the real source of doubt. At the center of this story is not betrayal, but asymmetry. A life that fits one partner naturally, while asking the other to disappear. This does not doom a marriage, but it raises questions about long-term fulfillment. The Matthews lifestyle leaves little room for reinvention. It is optimized for stability, not evolution. If Pippa's needs were to change, the structure itself would resist that change, publicly. The image is reassuring. A stable marriage, 3 children, beautiful homes, no chaos. Privately, the reality appears more complex, a life maintained through silence, control, and withdrawal. Neither version is false. They coexist. The question people keep asking is not whether the marriage is happy, but whether it is elastic enough to endure future change. That is why doubt follows this marriage quietly and persistently. Not because it looks fragile, but because it looks sealed, and sealed lives invite speculation about what happens when personal needs evolve. Pippa Middleton's marriage may last precisely because it is rigid, or it may struggle because rigidity resists adaptation. That ambiguity, not gossip, is what keeps the question alive. What ultimately keeps the speculation alive is not a single observable flaw, but the way this marriage appears to remove space for transformation. Most long-lasting relationships evolve through phases, periods of expansion, recalibration, reinvention. In the Matthews household, evolution appears tightly managed. Change happens slowly, deliberately, and only within approved boundaries. That works well for preserving stability, but it leaves little room for personal surprise. Over decades, the absence of surprise can quietly drain vitality, especially for a partner. Its earlier life was shaped by variety and social movement. Pippa's pre-marriage identity was never loud, but it was externally reinforced. She existed in multiple spheres at once: social, athletic, charitable, and cultural. She could move between them fluidly, drawing energy from contrast. After marriage, those spheres collapsed into one primary domain: family and estate. Even her entrepreneurial activities remain contained within the Matthews ecosystem. They do not expand her visibility or independence. They reinforce the existing structure. That containment may feel purposeful now, but long-term fulfillment often depends on having at least one space that belongs entirely to oneself. James Matthews, by contrast, appears fully aligned with the life he leads. His sense of self does not depend on public acknowledgement or external stimulation. His world is inward-facing by design. The marriage did not ask him to abandon a previous identity. It confirmed it. This difference matters because long-term strain rarely comes from conflict. It comes from imbalance when one partner grows through continuity while the other grows through sacrifice. Sacrifice can be sustainable when it is reciprocal. It becomes fragile when it is one-sided and permanent. The Matthews family's resistance to narrative also plays a role in refusing interviews, avoiding social media, and maintaining near total silence. They prevent the public from recalibrating its perception. There is no new story to replace the old one, so observers continue comparing Pippa's current invisibility to her past visibility. Silence freezes identity in time, does not allow for reinterpretation. As years pass without visible evolution, the gap between who Pippa was perceived to be and who she now appears to be widens. That gap becomes a projection screen for doubt. Even moments that might signal warmth or ease are filtered through restraint. When photographed, the couple appears composed, functional, and efficient. There is nothing performative about their connection. While this may reflect authenticity, it also denies the public emotional cues. Humans instinctively read relationships through visible signals. When those signals are absent, people fill in the blanks. In high-visibility families, restraint often reads as secrecy, even when it is simply habit. Another subtle factor is generational expectation. The Matthews legacy emphasizes preservation of wealth, privacy, and reputation. This places quiet pressure on continuity. Divorce, reinvention, or radical personal shifts would not just affect the couple. They would ripple through property arrangements, business interests, and family narratives. The weight of that legacy makes change feel consequential. When change feels costly, people suppress it. Over time, suppression can masquerade as peace. Pippa's proximity to royalty magnifies all of this. Royal life is also restrictive, but it offers symbolic progression. There are milestones, ceremonies, roles, and recognition. Each stage affirms purpose. A Pippa's life, by contrast, appears deliberately flat. There are no new titles, no expanding responsibilities, no visible arc. That flatness does not imply dissatisfaction, but it does imply stasis. In a culture conditioned to equate fulfillment with visible momentum, stasis becomes suspicious. The children add another layer. Parenting brings meaning, but it also locks routines in place. In a household already resistant to change, children anchor patterns more deeply. Years pass quickly in such environments, and by the time questions surface, choices feel irreversible. People sense this and project forward. They imagine decades of the same rhythm, the same locations, the same social limits. For some personalities, that is security. For others, it is erosion. Importantly, none of this suggests imminent collapse. There are no signs of emotional volatility or public withdrawal from family life. Instead, what people sense is emotional compression. A life where tension is absorbed quietly rather than released outward. Compression can last a long time, can even feel like harmony. But it requires constant internal adjustment, especially from the partner whose world narrowed most. Speculation persists because the marriage offers no counter-narrative. There are no visible indicators of growth that might reassure observers. No independent public pursuits, no reemergence in a different form, no evidence that the structure can flex. In the absence of that evidence, people default to the assumption that rigidity will eventually be tested. This is why the belief that the marriage may not last is not rooted in cynicism. It is rooted in pattern recognition. People recognize systems that work beautifully until they don't. Systems optimized for control tend to struggle with emotional evolution. Relationships inside such systems can endure for years, even decades, before strain becomes visible. When it does, it often surprises outsiders precisely because everything looks so calm. Pippa Middleton's marriage exists in that ambiguous space. It may endure because both partners continue choosing the same values. Or it may face difficulty if one partner's internal needs shift beyond what the structure allows. The public does not wait for evidence of collapse. It waits for signs of flexibility. So far, the lifestyle offers continuity, not adaptability. In the end, the doubt surrounding this marriage says as much about cultural expectations as it does about the couple themselves. Modern narratives prize self-expression, reinvention, and visible growth. A life built on discretion, repetition, and inward focus feels countercultural. When one partner has already lived a more expansive life, the contrast becomes sharper. Observers do not accuse, they wonder, and wondering persists. When answers are unavailable, Pippa Middleton's marriage is not under scrutiny because it appears weak. It is under scrutiny because it appears immovable. Stability without visible evolution unsettles people who believe fulfillment requires motion. Whether that belief is true is beside the point. What matters is perception. And perception once formed lingers. If this marriage lasts, it will be because both partners continue finding meaning in restraint. If it struggles, it will not be because of scandal, but because sealed systems resist growth. That tension between preservation and evolution is the quiet force driving speculation.
Ow.
And until something shifts, either publicly or privately, that question will continue to follow them, not loudly, but persistently, in the silence they have chosen. What makes this silence so durable is that it is consistent. There are no contradictions, no slips, no moments where the structure visibly fails. The Matthews household behaves exactly as it was designed to behave. That consistency is admirable. But it also removes the emotional landmarks people use to measure vitality. Without visible markers of joy, struggle, ambition, or reinvention, observers are left only with stillness. And stillness, when prolonged, is rarely interpreted as dynamic fulfillment. Another reason the speculation refuses to die is that the marriage appears insulated not only from the public, but from cultural time itself. Trends change, values shift, and public life evolves, yet Pippa's role appears frozen at the moment of her wedding. She became a wife and mother within a powerful private structure, and that identity has remained static. There is no visible narrative of personal growth. Layered on top of it, when identity stops evolving outwardly, people assume it has stopped evolving inwardly as well. Even if that assumption is unfair, the Matthews family's approach to privacy also eliminates corrective feedback. Public figures often recalibrate their lives in response to external signals: criticism, praise, curiosity, demand. Pippa receives none of that. Silence removes pressure, but it also removes reflection. Without a mirror, change must come entirely from within. That requires strong internal alignment over long periods of time. That alignment ever weakens. There are few outlets to express or process it. James Matthews' emotional economy further shapes this dynamic. Hedge fund culture rewards detachment, discipline, and emotional regulation. These traits are valuable in business, but in personal relationships they can create a climate of quiet endurance rather than expressive connection. Again, this does not imply coldness, it implies efficiency. But relationships do not always thrive on efficiency, they thrive on responsiveness. When both partners share the same emotional language, efficiency feels safe. When they don't, it can feel limiting. Pippa's adaptability has been her defining strength. She adapted to sudden global attention, navigated royal adjacency without missteps, and then adapted again into near total privacy. Adaptable people often appear resilient, but adaptability can mask deferred needs. Danger is not that adaptation fails, but that it becomes habitual. When someone adapts too completely, they risk losing the friction that signals unmet desire. Over time, that friction doesn't disappear. It settles. Another quiet factor is choice visibility. Many of Pippa's current choices are indistinguishable from default outcomes within the Matthews world. Living in Bucklebury, prioritizing privacy, centering family, avoiding publicity, these are not choices that signal personal authorship. They signal alignment. Observers question marriages when one partner's choices appear absorbed into the other's framework rather than generated independently. Again, this does not prove dissatisfaction. It explains why doubt feels reasonable rather than malicious. The community-facing projects at Bucklebury Farm briefly suggested an outward turn, but even these remain carefully contained. They're local, controlled, and aligned with the family's values. They do not create a new public identity for Pippa. They reinforce an existing private one. There is no risk of narrative expansion, and nothing that would force the Matthews family to renegotiate visibility. The system remains intact. Speculation also feeds on the absence of conflict signals. In public marriages, even healthy ones, moments of tension often surface unintentionally. A misaligned gesture, an unscripted remark, a change in routine. None of that exists here. The Matthews marriage appears professionally managed. That professionalism reassures some and unsettles others. Emotional life that never leaks feels curated, even if it is not. Time compounds all of this. Early years of marriage often justify contraction, nesting, focus, withdrawal. But as years pass, contraction without counterbalancing expansion begins to look permanent. People expect some outward movement, a new role, a reemergence, a pivot. When none comes, they infer that the system cannot accommodate it. And when a system cannot accommodate change, people assume pressure is being stored rather than resolved. Importantly, The doubts surrounding this marriage is not voyeuristic, it is structural. Do. Observers are responding to architecture, not gossip. They see a life optimized for protection rather than expression. Hey. They see one partner's world preserved intact and the other's fundamentally reshaped. Hey. They see permanence without visible negotiation. That combination naturally invites questions. About sustainability, there is also the psychological weight of no alternative. When a life is built so comprehensively, properties, businesses, children, legacy, exit becomes unthinkable. In such cases, endurance can be mistaken for fulfillment. People sense this and project it forward. They imagine staying not because it is nourishing, but because it is easier than leaving. Whether that is true is unknowable. But the perception alone fuels speculation. The Matthews family's success in maintaining a privacy paradoxically amplifies curiosity. The more complete the withdrawal, the more people analyze the remaining fragments. Every appearance becomes evidence. Every absence becomes a clue. In refusing to correct narratives, they allow narratives to harden. Silence over time becomes interpretive space. Pippa's lack of a visible independent voice is central here. Not because independence is morally superior, but because it signals elasticity. An elastic marriage can absorb difference, growth, and divergence. A sealed one requires sameness. The Matthews lifestyle appears to reward sameness. That is why observers wonder what happens if sameness no longer satisfies both partners equally. Even the emotional tone of their rare public moments reinforces this ambiguity. They appear calm, coordinated, and reserved. There is affection, but it is muted. There is unity, but it is procedural. This does not indicate emotional absence, but it does indicate emotional containment. Containment works until it doesn't. People intuitively understand this. Even if they cannot articulate it, ultimately the reason people believe this marriage may not last has little to do with Pippa or James as individuals. It has to do with the system they inhabit. Systems built for preservation excel at minimizing disruption. They struggle with transformation. Long marriages require transformation. Needs change. Identities evolve. Priorities shift. A system that resists change must either bend or break when those shifts occur. For now, the Matthews system appears unbent. That is why it looks strong. It is also why it attracts doubt. Strength without flexibility is impressive in the short term and precarious in the long term. People sense that tension and translate it into speculation. If the marriage endures, it will likely do so quietly, without public affirmation, through continued alignment and shared values. If it falters, it will not explode into scandal. It will dissolve slowly, privately, and with minimal explanation. Both outcomes are consistent with the structure that defines their life. Until then, speculation remains unresolved because the evidence remains static. There's no movement, no rupture, no expansion, just continuity. And continuity, when absolute, always invites the same human question. Is this enough for a lifetime, or only for now?